What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're going to look at some players that apparently I have overlooked, at least according to you lot. I always have a look at the comments, even if I don't reply to them all on YouTube and on social media. I always see the comments, you're sleeping on this player, you've not mentioned this player enough, why are you not talking about this player? So in this video, we're going to go through some of them. So if you enjoy the video, give it a like and hit that subscribe button. Just before we jump into it, I wanted to talk about today's sponsor of the video, which is Fantasy Football Scout. Really great resource for any FPL manager. You can sign up to become a premium member using the link in the description below. Now, in other videos, I have gone through specific tools and showed you how to use them. In this one, I'm just going to show you the sheer amount of tools that are available, and I probably won't even have time to go through every single one. But you've got a season ticker, which is extremely customizable, so you can see different amount of game weeks. You can see more or less depending on what you want to look for your FPL team. You can go on difficulty. You can sort by rotations. If you need 4.5 million defenders for a certain period of time, you can find out which ones rotate the best. You've got a comparison tool as well, so you can put in different players. So we've got 8 Nuri there for Wolves. If we want to compare him to another Wolves fullback, you can just click on that and then it will start populating graphs and also stats below to show you who might be the best in different particular situations, like creating chances, having shots and that kind of stuff. And if you want to, you can also compare a third player as well. So there's the diagram for those two, or the graph, and then you got all their stats below. You've also got the Rate My Team tool, which I've showed you before, so you can build out your team and it will give you a projection for those players of what they're going to get over the next 6 weeks, so you can compare different setups and different players to try and get to the best team. Also very handy if you're undecided between two players, you could let the tool sort that out for you. Then you've got all the projections separately as well. There's player stats, team stats. You can have custom stats tables as well, which I use a lot. So these are all the ones that I've already got set up. I've had some of these set up for like 7 or 8 years at this point. I've been using the website for like 10 years altogether. There's members videos, there's a transfer planner in there as well. There's a hell of a lot. If you want to check it out, link in the description below. You can pay yearly or monthly, whichever way you want to do it. But it's super handy. If you're going to play FPL all season, make sure you consider it. So first up is Kyle Walker. He's only £5 million, which is why a lot of people think I've overlooked him. Okay, that's a very cheap price for a Man City defender. We know Man City, best defence in the league, plenty of clean sheets over the course of the season, and they've got the fixtures to get a fair few over the first 6, right? Bournemouth, to be honest, all of those fixtures, apart from maybe West Ham and possibly Aston Villa, I think are okay, because Bournemouth and Forest and Palace are all at home. And yes, Newcastle did better under Howe, but their attack wasn't necessarily that great. And Crystal Palace attack as well, I don't really rate that highly. I think it'll be a difficult fixture. Plus, they're all playing Man City, right? So there's always a high chance of a clean sheet for Man City in pretty much any fixture. And he's only 5.5% owned. The issue for me is, how often will he play? Okay, now, right now at the time of recording, Cucurella has still not been signed. As far as we know, Man City are looking for a new left back because obviously they've sold Zinchenko. Cancelo can play there, but they don't necessarily always want him to play there. He can play on the right as well. And Pep might want a left-footed left back, right? Cancelo is right-footed, so it's not necessarily ideal. And playing Cancelo there might mean that he has to play someone different elsewhere just to get some left-footers on that kind of left-hand side. And that is part of the problem. The fact that they're trying to sign a left back so that Cancelo doesn't always have to play there, and I think Cancelo will start more often than not, means he's got to play elsewhere, which is probably going to be right back, which means Kyle Walker's minutes are not guaranteed. Now, you might turn around and say, well, if Cucurella's not signed or a new left back isn't signed soon, Kyle Walker's going to start the season. And I would usually agree with that, but there's every chance that Ake could also play left back to get Cancelo in on that right hand side. Now, for what it's worth, I don't think that Cancelo on the left and Kyle Walker on the right is a bad thing. I'm just saying it's not guaranteed that he plays, and I think the way a lot of people are talking about him is that he will start the season and he is pretty much guaranteed for like the first 3 to 4 weeks, and I just don't know if that is the case. Now, the way it's looking with the centre backs right now, Diaz should be okay. Laporte looks like he's probably going to miss the start of the season, and Stones isn't currently with the main group of players. I think he's training with the under-23s or away with the under-23s. So that's not necessarily ideal. So it could be the case that Diaz and Ake are the centre-backs, and then you probably would have Cancelo and Walker full-backs. But as soon as someone comes back fit and available, whether that's Stones, whether that's Laporte, or whether they sign a new left-back, things could change and rotation could happen. So I love Kyle Walker, like 4.2 points per match for 5 million, bearing in mind there's a lot of clean sheets in those fixtures, is decent. I'm just worried about his minutes, and I don't want to have to use a transfer too soon on one of my defenders at 5 million. So, yeah, if you think he's going to play a lot, great pick. I'm just a little bit unsure right now. Not saying I definitely won't go for him, but that's why I've maybe overlooked him a bit. So probably a little bit harsh to say that I've overlooked Jesse Lingard, because essentially he hasn't been an option for most of pre-season, but he has now signed for Nottingham Forest. He is 6 million, so it's a good chance to talk about him. My overall opinion is I quite like him as an option at 6 million for some point in the season. I'm just not sure from game week 1 is the time. I just think Forest, Bournemouth and Fulham all have fairly difficult fixtures to start. Even if you looked at Lingard as a very short-term option for the first 3, Newcastle and Newcastle and Everton are both away, and the other fixture is West Ham, so it's not necessarily ideal. His fixtures from game week 6 onwards get pretty good, but so do Fulham and Bournemouth's, and then you've got the likes of Mitrovic for just 0.5 million more on penalties. You've also got Solanke at Bournemouth for the same price, also on penalties. So whether or not Jesse Lingard is a better option than those guys, I'm not so sure. But I think in his own right, he's not a bad option, right, at 6 million. I'm just not sure from game week 1. In terms of his potential, he's going to probably play that number 10 spot. From what I've read up on Forest, they usually play that 3-4-1-2. So he'll be behind the 2 strikers. But again, what a lot of Forest fans have been saying to me is that Brennan Johnson tends to drift wide. And if Awani also opens up space for Lingard to run in kind of beyond them, he's going to be good at that, right? He's going to like that as well. We saw that at West Ham when he played there. Obviously not last season, but with Antonio, he often ran on ahead of Antonio. He likes those runs in the box. He likes progressing the ball up the field. He's not afraid to have a shot as well. So I do like him. I think if you remember that hot streak he had at West Ham, that's probably not something he's ever going to be able to continue. But I think he will tick over with points. And I do think it's a fair price. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having maybe 1 or 2 players in your team that, okay, they don't have perfect fixtures, but you know they're nailed on. You know, bar an injury, you're not going to have to use transfers on them. And because of their minutes, right, Lingard's probably going to play 80 to 90 minutes every single week, especially with the wages he's on. He is going to tick over with points. So I like him. I just question whether he's a fantastic option for game week 1. But game week 6 onwards, I think people will start looking at him. So some people have said that I haven't talked about Man United in general enough during pre-season, which is funny because I usually get accused of talking about them too much, but we are going to talk about them in this one. People saying that I'm overlooking Jadon Sancho. He's 12% owned. Rashford is slightly more owned, around 13.3, and Martial is less owned than Sancho, possibly because of the issues with Ronaldo, whether he's going to stay, whether he's going to go. I think overall with Man United right now, my thoughts are that I'm optimistic. I think they have been priced well. They are priced where they are potentially good value, but I'm cautious as well. One of the reasons they've been priced like that is because they were not great at all last season, and a lot of it depends on how quickly you think Ten Hag can get them playing and get them scoring goals. Now, the pre-season has been good. Now, we have to take pre-season with a pinch of salt, of course. They're not necessarily playing at full intensity, neither are their opponents, and their opponents are not necessarily playing at full strength either. But the fact that Ten Hag has got so many minutes with those 3 players in that front line can only be a good thing. And I think he is someone that is going to want runners in behind. He's going to want players getting in the box, and that should, therefore, be easier to score goals. Whether that happens, we'll have to wait and see. I think the fixtures are okay. I think Man United can get goals against Brighton, Brentford and Southampton. Liverpool's obviously a little bit tougher. Whether or not they would completely turn teams like Brighton and Brentford over, again, I'm a little bit cautious about that. But overall, I do like their prices. Let's talk about Sancho. 7.5, really good numbers from the Bundesliga. Did not deliver on that promise last year. I don't think we write off last season and completely forget about it, but I think Ten Hag is a better manager than Solskjaer and Rangnick, and he's going to have a more attacking way of playing. And I think he's a very, very hands-on coach, and I think the players will kind of deliver on that. They'll like that, okay? So I think, again, there is a bit of optimism there. The problem with Sancho is he's 7.5 million. So my initial reaction is, well, for 0.5 million more, I can go and get any of those £8 million midfielders. And Mason Mount and Saka and Luis Diaz are probably right now all better options than Sancho, and they all have better fixtures as well. Now, it's very easy to sit here and say, well, just spend 0.5 million more, just spend £1 million more. It's not that easy when you start building your squad because budgets are tight, right, with that 100 million at the start of the season. But I do think you do what you can to spend 0.5 million more. I don't think Jadon Sancho is necessarily someone that I would go with straight away. If he was 7, or 6.5 like Rashford, then it's a little bit different. And I know why he's been priced at 7.5, because I think he is the most nailed on out of all of them, right? If Ronaldo stays, then Martial's minutes might be an issue. If Ronaldo stays and plays, then Martial could at some point play off the left as well, which means Rashford wouldn't play there. If he's going to try and get Fernandes and Eriksen in the team, and Eriksen doesn't play in the double pivot, will he take one of the front three roles in some games where maybe there's a low block and stuff like that? We just don't know yet, so there's question marks. But Sancho is probably the most nailed of that front three, which is why he's 7.5, but that price point actually puts me off because of the £8 million midfielders. I actually like Martial the best, I think, because he takes up a forward spot, which I like. I think at 7 million, he's rivaling someone like Ivan Toney at Brentford. We have seen Martial, when he plays as that number 9, he does kind of thrive under it. I think if he's got, especially if Ronaldo goes, I think he's going to like the fact that he knows he's the main man. He's going to get a run of games, and he's got Ten Hag there, who seems to have liked what he's done in pre-season. So Martial is actually my favourite option. The thing with Rashford, he's a full million less than Sancho, and I think that is big. If those three are going to start the season, I just don't see why you'd spend an extra million from Rashford to Sancho. I think if they deliver on both of their promises, they can both get goals, both get assists, and I'd probably just save the million. Like, if you're going to take a punt on Man United and hope that they improve from last year, which remains to be seen, of course, I'd try and go the cheapest route possible. So I like Sancho as a player. I really want him to deliver on all that promise from the Bundesliga. But as an FPL option, I just don't think I'd be spending 7.5 from the get-go. So a bit like Lingard, Zinchenko now officially has his move. He's gone to Arsenal, £5 million defender. There is potential there. I think when I first saw that he was moving, I was quite excited. I have cooled down a little bit on that. Most of that is just over minutes, right? I need to be assured that he's definitely going to play week in, week out, and almost preferably in midfield. I know what people are saying, the fact that moving from a fullback to a midfield position does not necessarily mean more attack and returns. Given how a lot of teams use their fullbacks these days, they're part of the attack. They do get goals, they do get assists. The reason that I was thinking that Zinchenko could be the best Arsenal defender is none of the Arsenal defenders are that attacking, right? Tierney is pretty good, but he's not up there with the likes of Perisic or Chilwell or James or Trent and players like that. So I think Zinchenko in midfield had the chance to kind of be the best. But whether or not he's going to play there every single week when Tierney is fit, we don't really know. And if he doesn't, is Tierney going to suddenly miss out on all games and just playing cup games and rotate and stuff like that? I'm not sure that's the case either. Now, Tierney is back in training. Whether or not he'll be fit to start the season, we'll have to wait and see. And Zinchenko could start the season as the left back. But once Tierney is fit, does Zinchenko definitely take one of the midfield spots? And does he play there every single week? And that's the worry for me, right? I think if he was nailed on playing every week, he is possibly the best Arsenal defender. But until we know that, I don't know if I want to go there. So I like him as an option. I do really like those Arsenal fixtures. I think Palace, Bournemouth, Fulham and Villa, there's good chances of clean sheets in any of those games. Obviously, they're not going to get 5 in 5, but they could easily get 2 or 3 in those games. And he has the potential for attack and returns as well. I'm just slightly worried about his minutes. Let's wait and see what the updates are on Tierney. And if he starts any of the pre-season games, let's see where Zinchenko plays and how many minutes he gets. I think he could be decent, just slightly unsure for the start of the season. I think with Man City players, it's always the same, isn't it? If they play, they're going to get you points. But the big question is, will they play? And usually my answer for most players that aren't called Ruben Dias, Kevin De Bruyne or Ederson in goal is that I just don't know. But I am getting a little bit more bullish on Grealish the closer we get to the Game Week 1 deadline. He has made it into a few of my drafts. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, in pre-season, he's getting a pretty good amount of minutes. I believe Foden is not with the main group of players, so he hasn't played as much as someone like Grealish. So we could see him get a little bit of a run at the start of the season. We've seen in previous seasons that sometimes Pep just likes those players that are just the fittest. And as they get further into the season and other players start to pick up their fitness as well, he does start to rotate a little bit more. But there's nothing to say that some of these players won't get a little bit of a run in the team at the start of the season. The other reason that I'm a little bit bullish on him is his price tag's only 7 million. So if he does get the odd bit of rotation, it's maybe a little bit easier to swallow than if he was 8 million or 9 million or even more expensive. And we know the underlying numbers are good. We know he's probably going to get points in that Man City team if he plays. And the fixtures are brilliant as well. I do think last year he underperformed. His underlying numbers, expected goals, expected assists, was still pretty good. I think he did well for Man City in certain aspects. Ball carrying, ball progression, he's extremely good at. There was just a few, even in the Champions League against Real Madrid, right, he should have probably scored and he didn't. He caused them trouble when he came on. It just didn't quite get in the back of the net for him. And I think at some point we're going to see that change. So, yeah, again, with Man City players, I'm a little bit cautious because of minutes, but if it looks like he's going to start the season and get a little bit of a run, that run might only be 3 to 4 fixtures, he could still be a good option for 7 million, who we then move on later. Let's see how many more minutes the players get in pre-season. Let's see who lines up against Liverpool. But at 7 million, there's a lot worse punts out there. Look, I like Jamie Vardy. Every year he makes me look like an idiot. I sit here in pre-season, he's another year older. Maybe this is the season he slows down. And then he doesn't. He's still got penalties in his locker. He's still first choice striker. No Europe to contend with. His underlying numbers are still looking pretty healthy. The price is fair, for sure. I think it's probably a little bit expensive for what we want for our Game Week 1 teams. But given what he does when he's fit, that is a fair price. I do look at those fixtures though and just worry about them. I think Brentford at home and Southampton at home is good, but that's quite a short-term viewpoint. I think Arsenal away, Chelsea away had the potential to be difficult, as do Man United and Brighton away as well. So I don't really like the first 6 fixtures. I'm not writing Jamie Vardy off. He could easily come away with 5 to 6 goals because that's just how good he is. But I feel there's a lot of reliance on Brentford and Southampton. And if you only had him as a short-term pick and then moved him on, most of the forwards you're going to want are cheaper, so it's easy to move to them, but then you need another transfer to redistribute those funds. And I think it's just that 9.5 million tag that kind of puts me off. It's just an awkward price point. I think it's expensive enough that if you have Salah and you put Vardy in, that probably means you're not also having Son, Kane or Haaland to go with him. And I think that's where it puts me off. I want one of those premiums, and once you put them in, it's then very difficult to also have Vardy as well. So maybe if you go for the one premium style draft where you captain Salah every week, Vardy fits in. But outside of that, it's quite hard to do. I think if he was 8.5 or below, of course we'd go for him. But I also see why FPL haven't priced in that cheap. So I like Vardy. If he stays fit without Europe, he's definitely going to be an option at some point. I just don't think I would personally go for him for Game Week 1. So I have talked about Leon Bailey a little bit. He was in my midfielders video. He was also in an earlier draft. He's not in my current one, which I'm going to show you soon. But I do think he's a potential good option for 5 million. The key issue for me is he worth spending 0.5 million more on than Andreas Pereira, who looks to be pretty nailed in that Fulham side on some set pieces and probably going to play in a fairly advanced position. The other option is to have both of them, but then you lose a midfield spot and you're probably then rotating them with maybe defenders or forwards instead, which is not necessarily an issue, but it might not be the absolute best way to set up your squad. I think if you're going to go for one cheap midfielder, right now you probably do just go for Andreas Pereira. There's question marks over Leon Bailey's minutes, and that's the key issue for me. Gerrard spoke about in pre-season. He said he's been impressed. It was more than an impact that he made. He changed the game. That was in the pre-season game against Man United. He's come back a different player. He was talking about the fact it's not just from a technical point of view. It's his body language. I think he's trusting his body more, Gerrard went on to say. And then he said, we need to keep him healthy. He's sending a massive signal to me that he wants to be in the 11. So if he starts against Bournemouth, I like it. It's a nice differential to start that doesn't cost you too much money. I think Everton's a good fixture as well. After that, I think from an attacking point of view, it gets pretty tricky for Aston Villa. And if you decide to go for Leon Bailey as well as Andreas Pereira, then where do you go if you need to transfer him out? You've probably got to spend more money, which means taking funds out elsewhere. And I don't know if he's that good that we need to go to those kind of that hassle, basically. My other worry with him is, even if he starts the season well, what happens as soon as he has a few bad games? Because in attack, I would say there's not a huge amount of players that are nailed in that Aston Villa side. And there's a lot to choose from overall in the attacking position. So Leon Bailey, Traore, Coutinho, Buendia, Watkins, Ings. A lot of players to fit in. There could be different formations that are played around with. So I think there is a chance that he starts the season. I don't necessarily think he's a better option than Andreas Pereira for that cheap bench spot because of the money saved. And I don't know if it's the best use of kind of midfield spots to have both of them. My big worry is that if he starts to perform badly or has a bad run of games, he'll quickly be pulled out of the side because Gerrard's got a lot of options there. But there we go. There are just some of the players that apparently I'm overlooking. Are any of them going to make it in your Game Week 1 squad? Leave me a comment below and let me know. I'm looking at the list again. I think Bailey possibly might get into my team. Grealish at 7 and Zinchenko at 5 have got a chance as well. Lingard probably gets in later on. And Kyle Walker maybe, but it could be Ake instead. It's all going to depend on minutes with them. And that's an issue with a lot of these players. It's just that expected minutes. Will they get enough time on the pitch to get those points we need? So let me know in the comments below what you think. Give it a like and hit the subscribe button if you're new around here. And don't forget to check out Fantasy Football Scout. There is a link in the description below to go through and sign up as a premium member. Otherwise, I'll leave it there and I'll be back tomorrow with my current draft.